talking about thanking for yourself. Now, this is actually going to be even more pointed than simply just thanking for yourself. This is normally I would just do it as a overall, just being mindful in society and so forth. But somebody reached out to me recently and they were in this controlled environment. They had went to this workshop or this retreat, as it were, and it was being ran and is being ran by this guru. And now they're like a few weeks, months into it, and they're apprehensive. But they state that they're going to stay into it and they just wanted some tools to be able to navigate. So when we're talking about thinking for yourself, we're talking about thinking for yourself in a controlled environment. They talk about the matrix, and somebody said recently, and it was point on about the movie The Matrix. It said that the Matrix, many of us see the Matrix as simply a movie, but the Matrix itself wasn't simply a movie, it was a documentary. And it's based off of, they had to change some things, they had to tone it down and they made it digital and so forth. But we're literally living in a matrix. Now, the question is, how do you survive in a matrix? So we're really going to be dealing with the red pill, blue pill type moments. But I'm going to give you some tools where you can begin thanking for yourselves. We've been so taught, so conditioned to allow other people to think for us. And what we want to do is just, even if you're in a controlled environment, I think about this gentleman, his name was Viktor Frankl, and he was he was a Jew in a German concentration camp, a Jew in a German concentration camp. And he noticed that everybody around him was seemingly perishing. And he knew that he had to begin thinking differently. And so he started taking inventory. He started forecasting. He started using a lot of the tools that I'm going to talk about today. You have to begin be the co-creator with the divine in you of your world. Ancient text says, judge not according to outward appearance. And this is what most of us do. So we keep in a loop of repeating the outward experience, as it were. So like I said, we're going to talk about some things that will allow us to transcend and begin thinking for ourselves. So when you're in an environment, and again, we're speaking to a controlled environment because, like I said, somebody had reached out to me and they were in this type of environment. And nobody ever knows what the future holds, but you may find yourself in a place that you may have limited access out of things out of your control and so forth. We want to be able to function and operate in that from a place of power. So this is what we're going to be talking about today. So first, when you're in an environment, whether it be exterior or whether you're in a controlled environment, whatever the case, pause inside. You may not be allowed, per se, to outrightly protest, but you can pause inside. I'm speaking, I was in one of the largest cults in the United States. And then, of course, I left that cult and went into a smaller cult. So the largest cult, I joined the United States Marine Corps. This is way back, in the 80s. But that was a choice of mine. And it was one of the most wonderful experiences that I ever had. But the second that I got there, the drill instructor started running down the line and he was screaming and so forth. And in my mind's eye, I knew that this was a part of the routine. So I'm kind of laughing to myself and saying, okay, I got this. But over time, with sleep deprivation, with being up all day, exercising, meals being split up, not being able to go and eat when you wanted to, good to see you, and not being able to do this, pretty soon I was broken down. I was always able to have my wherewithal, but it took a toll. So over time, and listen, you got to understand, government agencies, religious organizations, they all use these tactics. I mean, people that were held in different concentration camps and so forth, like in Vietnam or in Viktor Frankl's time in Germany and so forth, these tools work. That's why they use them. So what we want to do is be able to control our own inner conversation in spite what's going on the without. So pause, take a deep breath, and create a space of silence. Because a lot of times we are reactive. We're really in our emotional state. And so sometimes it's hard for us to focus on the events at hand. But breathe, count backwards if you need to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 10, 9, 8, whatever you need to do. But breathe deeply and begin to just be aware of your surroundings and create that space for that inner place, that inner peace, that inner space that, we're told to go into the closet. Create that space where you can enter into that sacred place that the world without cannot enter, because now you're allowed to focus and you can hear more of the divine speaking in you as you. But when you got all this noise going on, it's very difficult to hear. So get quiet. Next thing you need to do, ask the question silently, in silence. Do I agree what's being communicated? Do I feel that this is true? That's the inner check that matters. See what it is. But if you haven't prepared yourself, if you don't know what it is that you believe, a lot of times when people deal with people like, let's say, the Jehovah's Witness, because that's a prominent group. Now, if you're Jehovah's Witness, I'm not throwing shade, but many people don't like interacting with people like the Jehovah's Witness. Why? Because they're not sound in their own belief system. And it doesn't have to be the Bible, whatever, but you have to know what it is that you believe. And again, as we say from week in and week out, our goal is not to tell you what to believe, but that you believe. But according to as you believe, you be, do, and you will have. So this is why, sometimes people will come on the channel, whatever, and they're trying to evangelize whatever their belief system is. And I'm like, that's not the goal here. Our goal is for the individual to discover who the divine is for them. Now, I use biblical principles, but that's only for explaining what it is that I'm talking about. But my goal, now, if by chance you happen to take on that ideology because of something you heard, fine, but that's not my goal. And, a lot of times I have conversations with people that literally have gotten to a place where they're worshiping Neville Goddard. And Neville often said, anybody that's listened to a number of Neville's talks, he would tell you, listen, I'm not trying to get anybody to worship me or to bow down and cross themselves and so forth. That's not my goal. My goal is that you may discover the Father within. And that was even the master teacher's goal, that we may know the Father and that we're all connected. And so, but we have within us innately the need to, good to see you, John, the need to worship. That's in us. But the divine says, you should not have any other idol besides me. That besides me is found on the within, but we continuously find ourselves looking on the without. And again, that's just because of our makeup. So next thing, like I said, do I believe that what's being communicated is true for me, whatever it is? And if you don't agree, it's okay not to agree. My goal is not to get you to believe. I'm taking you on my experience. Neville took you on his experience. Joseph Murphy took you on his experience. Dr. Joe Dispenza took you on his experience. But you have your experience unique to you. And that's what you begin to share is your unique experience. And it may not, a lot of times people chase the promise, for example. Speaking of Neville Goddard and the promise, many people have probably already experienced the promise, but because Neville said his events happen like this, this and this and this, we go about seeking the same exact experience. We're like human snowflakes. I don't know. John, I only picked up bits of it, and then somebody else sent something after. Did I read? I've listened to and read literally hundreds of Neville's experiences, but it's not about Neville's experience. It's about your experience. Now, Neville's giving you some tools. Dr. Joseph Murphy's giving you some tools. DiCarlo, Mr. Lindo has given you some tools, but this is about your journey, not Neville's journey. And far too often, We're trying to live out another person's journey, and then we're upset because seemingly it's not working out. The divine within you has not called you to be Neville Goddard, Joseph Murphy, DeCarlo Eskridge, Linda Warden, whomever that teacher is, Dr. Joe Dispenza, whomever that teacher is. The divine wants you to have your own unique experience. Now, can some of the tools that Neville's given you benefit you? Absolutely. Can some of those tools that Dr. Joe Dispenza has given you benefit you? Absolutely. And I can go on and on and on and on. But your experience is going to be uniquely yours. Neville didn't go about trying to relive Abdullah's experience. Abdullah was his teacher. He learned from his teacher, but then he had his own unique experiences. And likewise, it should be with you. People get upset when I say that because they think that I'm blasting Neville. Nothing can be further from the truth. But Neville didn't want you to live out, per se, his experience or worship him or whatever. He wanted you to discover the divine within yourself. And this is why we can get so indoctrinated in cults and followings and so forth and find ourselves trapped. Because, like I said, we get into people worship, as it were, as opposed to realizing that the divine that was in them is also in you and wants to give. God wants to do something specifically, individually, through you as you, not somebody else. You can't live out Neville's experience. Can you have? I've had many of the promised experiences, but that's not a boast, and it's not even to say, well, I'm here because I've had those experiences. One thing has nothing to do with my relationship with Father. If I've never had any promised experience, I would have never doubted my relationship with Father. Never. And that's why I believe that I was able to experience some of those promised experiences, because I didn't need them to validate who I was with Father, Mother, Source, infinite intelligence known as God, whatever your belief system is. People think that you can be brought into a religion, for example, and this religion has billions of people, and there's multiple religions with billions of people. And because you became a member in a religious organization, that now all of a sudden that gives you access to God. Master teacher says, ye must be born again. And the elder Nicodemus says, can a man, woman enter into their mother's womb when they're old? He's saying, Master teacher said, you being spiritual, you don't understand these things? Born from above is a spiritual awakening to who you truly are. Your spiritual beings having a human experience. Once you start going into the silence, once you start meditating, once you start getting centered, you're going to begin to understand your identity with the allness that we call God. But if you're doing it or attempting to do it off of other people's experiences, Master Teacher gave an example. He said there were 5 virgins. 5 virgins were wise and the other were unwise. The 5 that were wise went out and had their own Christ or oil. We call that oil the anointing or the Christo. They understood their own relationship. The others went out and absolutely born from above. Absolutely. The others went out seeking at the last minute, trying to get somebody else's experience. So they went out and got Joseph Murphy's experience. They got Neville Goddard's experience. They got Joe Dispenza's experience. They got all these famous teachers, or all these teachers, these gurus. They got their experience, but they found themselves insufficient because they did not have their own experience. This is an individual journey. You must discover this, as Mr. Lindell says, week in and week out. This is an individual experience. You got to discover the divine within you for yourself. And you do that by continuously, intimately getting into the quiet place. This is why the Master Teacher said, go into the closet, shut the door, shut all the noise without. Okay, so first thing, pause and get centered. And this is speaking again of just controlling your own thinking. Do I believe that? That's the next thing you ask yourself. Do I believe? If you're in an environment, even if you're in this community, because it may not be for you, if I'm saying things that may not, because of where you're at the moment, may not resonate with you. And let me share this with you before I go on. Because of my indoctrination, when I first heard the teachings of Neville Goddard, it shook me. The idea, the concept that the divine God is within me and not some place out there, some church, some organization, whatever. And he said even further, Midas, I'm not going to be able to read all that. It's just too much. If you can give me a sentence, I'll try to read the first. Experience God in our own. Absolutely. I got the first sentence. They only give me literally like a second to read it. So if you could like break it up and give me like a stretch of a sentence, and then if you want to send others after that. But you're absolutely correct. Midas was saying that it's about our own personal experience. And this is the only thing I'm saying. When you have that, no matter what your situation, no matter what's going on in the world without, and you become like that Viktor Frankl and so many others that found themselves in very hard, dire situations seemingly, but they realized that the divine was in them. And no matter what was going on in the world without, they were centered. Absolutely. We're all individuals. We're all individual. Let me see if I can get it. Thank you, sister. We're all individualizations of the one known as God. In some places, we call that the Elohim, the one God made up of many. We're all individual expressions of the divine. We're like snowflakes or raindrops. There's no two raindrops. There's no two snowflakes. There's no two sand, little grains of sand on the seashore that are identically the same. And with 8 billion people, we're all 8 billion expressions of God. The problem is most of us have forgotten that we're expressions of God, so we think that we can treat the other based off of their religious beliefs, off of their skin color, off of their creeds, off their doctrines, off their dogmas, whatever, a certain kind of way, and it doesn't affect us. This is like a cell in a body going in rebellion. What do we call a rebellious cell in a body? We call it cancerous. Many of us are operating from a place of cancerous mindsets, and we think that our cancerous mindset will not affect us in particular, and we think that we can just send out. But ancient text says, if you do it unto another, not only do you do it to the Christ within you, but you do it also unto yourself. It can't not be otherwise. And this is why those people that are seemingly in power, the top 0.001%, they think that they can treat the population a certain kind of way and it not affect them. Nothing can be further from the truth. But many of them, most of them, are asleep. Our goal is hopefully to wake some of them up so that they can see otherwise. But let's move forward. How do you feel in your body? So I'm speaking now to the person that may be in a situation that they know something's not right. So do you feel tense? Do you feel dread? Do you feel pressure? That's a sign that you may be accepting someone else's control. Again, my goal, test these things for yourself. This is my whole push to you. It's not about me. It's not about Mr. Lindo. It's not even about Neville Goddard. Test these things for yourself and see if they're true. Now, if you test them and you say, Coach DeCarlo was just full of a whole bunch of stuff, then so be it. And this is why somebody will come onto the channel and they'll hear something that I say and they say, this is a bunch of crock. And I say, you're absolutely correct. Because for that individual, they can't see otherwise. And it's futile for me to try to convince them otherwise. And likewise with you, don't spend all your energy trying to convince someone that something that you've come into or some knowledge that you've come into. You put it out there, you share it with them, and you release it. That's your business. You've done your part. But like so many people in religion, they feel like it's their goal to make sure that by the end of the conversation, you believe that's control, that's manipulation. The goal should be to share whatever the message is, and then let whosoever is able to receive that message, receive the message, and those who can't, you go on about your business, because even though they may not be able to receive it at the moment, they may come back to it later on and say, something that she said is making a lot of sense now. And they may start questioning the control that's being held over them. Now, I spoke for those who may have come early on in the call. The person came to my YouTube channel. Now, the person had been a part of a member of my YouTube channel probably for like the last 3 years, never heard anything from them. But today they decided, because this was like the only outlet that they had, they're in this cult. and they're wondering how long do I stay in, what do I do, so forth. And I reached out to them and kind of shared some of the stuff that I'm sharing with you. But the whole point was they have to ultimately make a decision to say, this environment is not conducive for my growth. But he's got this very charismatic teacher, and this teacher is apparently very good in the art of persuasion. And so this person's writing me in my Facebook group, and he's saying, well, she, I don't know if it's a male or female because of the name, um, and they have an avatar, but I'm assuming it's a he. But they say, well, I'm going to stay a few more months. To stay in an environment where you're able to leave for a few more months, you're only going to go deeper in the indoctrination. To stay in groups, to stay around people that are unhealthy for you, the only thing that happens is it takes you deeper in the indoctrination. Now, my goal is not to tell that person what to do, but I am concerned for their well-being if they have all these concerns. But each person has to do ultimately what's best for them. You in your thinking, you can continue to allow other people to think for you. You know, like I said, often people will say, well, Neville Goddard says this, or Joseph Murphy says this, or this teacher says this. My question ultimately to the person that says that is, what do you say? Because see, it doesn't even matter what Coach DiCarlo or anybody else says. You have to test these things for yourself and find out if they're true. See, once you start testing them and you start getting the results or not getting the results, then you can make a decision. Say, okay, I need to do something different. But somebody said to me a few years ago, they had been like 6 years or so practicing Neville Goddard's principles and so forth, and they weren't getting the results. And my answer to them is stop doing that. If you're practicing anybody's teachings, if you're practicing biblical teachings, and I know that this is going to rub some people the wrong way, but I still need to say, if you're practicing these principles and they're not serving you, then stop doing that. And then find out what serves you. You're ultimately the creator of your world. You can't keep giving that power away and expecting that you're going to get different results. If whatever it is that you're doing isn't serving you, stop doing that and try something else. Okay, so notice how your body feels. Your body is an amplifier and it's telling you. Sometimes we'll step into a situation and we know that we're not supposed to be there because everything in us, our spidey, what do they say? Our spidey senses are tingling and so forth, and it's just my spidey senses are going off. So Spider-Man. Anyway, you know that you're not supposed to be there, and yet you're disobedient to the divine within you, and then something happens. And you're like, well, why did this happen to me? But you knew that you weren't supposed to be there. That was its way. That was body. That was spirit. That was source's way of protecting you. But you went around the protection. I thank the divine for all the grace that's been given to me, for all those times that I went around the protection, that I shouldn't even be here. But I thank the divine for grace. And hopefully you'll operate within that grace and come back from it and say, okay, I can make better decisions now. Okay, so what is your body saying? Now, one of the things that this person said that was in this group, they were asked to give like a number of secrets, or let me say wishes, desires that they wanted to achieve. Nothing wrong with that. But the person says, I'm really feeling uncomfortable with that. You got to understand that the currency today really always has been, but we're realizing it today, is your data, your information. This is why corporations will spend not billions, but trillions of dollars to get your information, because with that information, they know how to sell you. They know how to approach you. And this is what I communicated to the person. I said, information is power in the right hands, being utilized by the right person, or even by the wrong person. It's power. So the next thing that you have to do when you're in a controlled environment to control your thinking is hold secrets, those little tidbits of secrets for yourself. What do I mean by that? There may be something that, a private thought, a memory, an ideal just for you. That dream that you want to achieve. There was a guy that was in a POW camp in Asia, and he was there for a number of years. And the secret that he had that nobody else knew, he would play these golf games. He would continuously play these golf games in his mind. And when he was finally released, his golf game had improved so dramatically that he was a better golfer. Now, of course, he had to get muscle memory and everything else going once that was established. His golf game was better than it ever had been prior to him having that experience. We know of athletes that, let's say basketball, or whatever, you got those in a control group that don't do anything. You got some that physically practice. Good morning, good to see you. Those who physically practice, shooting the basketball, and then those who mentally practice shooting the basketball. And they find that those who do nothing get nothing. But those who practice physically, they get better results. But those who practice mentally, their results are almost as good, if not sometimes better, than those who practice physically. What am I saying to you? What you're doing in imagination is going through your physical body as a fact, in your subconscious mind as reality. It's seeing what it is that you're imagining as being true for you. So if you're imagining terror, then for you at that moment, the terror is real. If you're imagining breakthrough, prosperity, abundance, then for you at that moment, it's so. And going back to the story of Viktor Frankl, he was in a cesspool. When he was in the German concentration camp, often he found himself in a cesspool. He didn't see a cesspool. He saw a Garden of Eden. And that was his getaway. When he got into that cesspool and in that waste and everything, he was imagining in his mind's eye this beautiful oasis. He couldn't wait often to go to the cesspool because in his imagination, he was elsewhere. This is how powerful your mind is. So if you're in a controlled environment, keep writing, keep telling, keep repeating to yourself the story of who it is that you're being, doing, and having in spite of the environment or the circumstance. Some of you may be in circumstances right now of finances, poor relationships, or no relationships, poor health. Start telling yourself in this mental prison a different story. And all of a sudden, your prison is going to become your oasis. There's people incarcerated that are freer because of their spiritual journey in that incarceration than people who are supposedly free or liberated on the outside. It's all about your thinking. This is what I'm trying to get you to see. Okay, so hold that still small secret. It says that, when you're on the way to that manifestation, tell no person. Hold that for yourself. Don't give them everything. Revisit your values. What's important to you? Certain things with certain people, no matter what, they won't compromise certain things that have resonated with them their whole lives. Some of those things may be detrimental because of them not being, but they have a value. They stand on that. And it's more important to stand on a value that serves you than somebody else's opinion that's not serving you. So remember, revisit your values, those moments that you felt most yourself. What matters most to you? Hold on to that. No matter what's going on without, hold on to yourself, because in the end, that's what makes you you. Okay, so use silence. If you can't speak or if you can't write, create quiet cues or like symbols, words, prayers that remind you that you own your own mind. No matter what's going on without. Sometimes, I'll tell my dog to stop barking and, under her voice, you're like, "Rrr." So she's letting me know that I'm still barking on the inside. She still owns her own voice, even though I tell her to stop barking. So sometimes I don't even bother to tell her to start barking. I just close the door. My whole point is that portion of you that makes you you, hold on to it. Don't let anybody take it away from you. Keep repeating it. Keep seeing it. Keep embracing it. Thank you. Beautiful Aid. I appreciate you. You got to hold on to that. This you. And the thing is, nobody can take that away from you. Nobody can take that away from you. Okay, so again, we're speaking now primarily of a controlled environment when you don't have access out. And these are mental tools that I'm giving you that will allow you to control your inner space when all the outwardness seems like it's in chaos. Okay, so control tiny choices. It may be how you're breathing, you know, how you arrange your space. You know, particularly you may only have a small, but how am I arranging this space called mine, my home, my car, my, you know, if I'm walking to work, how am I arranging that space? Even simply, something comes to mind, and amidst all the chaos that's seemingly going on the without, you have the ability to smile. Nobody can take that away from you. Small decisions build inner freedom. Your small decisions, you making those decisions, letting you know that I'm still in control here. I'm still using my own ability to choose who I'm going to be at this moment is empowering. And nobody can take that away from you. Okay. You have to get to a place, and this is not easy what I'm about to say, but that you detach emotionally. When you're going through, one of the things with fatigue and everything else, I remember being in the military and, like I said, even being in a cult environment, a lot of times emotions, you know, we're, as Marines, we were told, scream, no, so we, oh, because they knew that screaming and so forth was emotional. And of course, that anchored whatever it was that they were teaching. Likewise, with cults and religious groups, you'll see a lot of emotional dancing. And I'm not saying anything's wrong with that when it's in the right environment, when it's in a safe environment. But it's also the same tools used in an unsafe environment. Sometimes, you know, we may be feeling a certain kind of way and we turn on some music and we start dancing, all of a sudden we feel empowered, but that's a safe environment. What I'm saying to you is you got to sometimes learn how to detach from what's going on the without. Because see, a lot of times what we give feelings, emotions to expands. And some of the stuff that's expanding at that moment, that's not what we want. So it's important to be able to detach from the situation, even though you're in the midst of it. People do this all the time. I was watching a young lady, she had been bitten on the leg by a shark. And in the process, everybody else was around her panicking, and she was able to detach from the situation. And by her being able to get calm in the situation, she was able to control the situation and also prolong her life. And now, of course, she's living, thriving, and doing all these great things and impacting the lives of so many others because of her own story. I told you this earlier, so I'll share this with you. Sometimes you have to practice an inner no. And I say no, N-O. Even though you may be doing something that you may not want to do. Like I said, you know, often I tell my dog, stop barking, and she get to under her voice. Sometimes you got to practice an inner no. And you may be doing what's required, but inside that no lets you know that you still have choice. So in practicing the inner no, even though you may be submitting to whatever, you're practicing the inner no still allows you to know I'm still in control of my thinking. Most of us have never gotten to this place where we're directing, being mindful, controlling our own inner conversation, and we allow the events on the without to dictate to us who we are. You'll never find your power that way. Matter of fact, the power will always be given to the sources on the without, whatever it is, whether it be religious, government, educational, family, whomever. But when you can control your own inner conversations, ancient text says you're stronger or better than a strong city because you have more control. Lastly, picture your own life. Picture who it is that you're doing, being, and having consistently in imagination. Keep that picture always before you. Ancient text says that the man Abraham was told to go out, leave what was familiar, and go to a land that would be shown to him. He saw the land, even though it wasn't developed, he saw it in his imagination as he wanted it to do, be, and have. He passed that on to his descendants. And now we have, of course, whatever it is that we want, everything that we've experienced. Now, unfortunately, most of us have pictured what it is that we did not want. So, of course, the only thing that you can reproduce is more of that. What I'm asking you to do is to begin picturing the life that you truly desire and hold it into imagination. And even though it seems like it's tearing and you're not seeing, you make wherever you're at, this is where you're standing is holy ground. You make wherever you're at that oasis. And so no matter what's being seen on the outside, you're seeing the best possible world because we talked last week about the different dimensions. You could be in one place and mentally travel to multiple different dimensions. You're not fixed. One day I'm probably going to talk about out of body experiences. Physical body is fixed here, but your spirit, your soul, your psyche isn't. Because we've so identified with this thing called body, we think that this is who we are. The body is nothing more, nothing less. I'm not downplaying the body. It's a vehicle of travel for your spirit. So it's important that you take care of it. But it's more important that you take care of your psyche, your emotions, your thoughts, your words, your attitudes, your dispositions. When you control those, then you will begin to control all those things on the without. This is not going to be one of those long lessons. I'm not going to draw it out, but I challenge you to go back and listen. Guys, this is not about me. This is about you controlling your own inner conversation. To the extent that you do that, it's going to determine your success in this hologram called reality. Guys, I love you. I appreciate you. Thanks for showing up. Hopefully you took something away from it. Talk to you later.